Awesome.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host Chris Shang, and we have Elise DeCamp today, who is co-founder and CEO of Toki. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Toki. We'd love to get to know about the product and what you guys do, what kind of company you guys work with, the whole nine.
Yeah, so Toki is a retention platform. So we work with brands, big and small, throughout the Shopify ecosystem, helping them with their retention tactics. And we're very data driven. So what that looks like for a up and coming parenting brand is different from a dog food brand. So we work with them on that and help them employ loyalty programs, membership programs, referral programs, whatever suits their needs.
Got it. Is there a particular like size of the company? I know you mentioned Shopify is like the main platform, but outside of that, are you looking for like a minimum amount of revenue for this to be successful for them or?
Yeah, it works with everybody. I think we have a lot of fun working with brands that typically have retail locations too. So oftentimes those are the brands that are doing like 50 million plus a year. But there's a strategy for everybody for sure.
Fair enough. Very cool. Before we dive into that world of things, want to kind of just talk about your professional background. Yeah, you see you started off in sales, done a little bit of marketing, where the founder had another time. What kind of got you into the field of sales, marketing, and then ultimately entrepreneurship? Where did that come from? Did you fall into it? Was it something that you're looking to get into when you were younger or studying in college? Where
Yeah.
did it start? Yeah.
Winding, man. Yeah, I feel bad you having to describe my career because it looks a little bit like this on paper.
Everybody, dude, everybody on the sales and marketing front is exactly the same way. Every founder
Right.
is exactly the same way. Guarantee
Right.
it. Like that's what we talk about is because like everybody's got their own unique story. It's very seldom times that you have like that person that was on the lemonade stand on the corner that was like doing that during the summers and then selling baseball cards. Like that's probably less than 5%.
Yeah, there you go. See, yeah, I think I learned, I feel like when I was like 26, I was like, oh, I need to have a narrative to this. It needs to make a bit more sense for people to be able to digest. But to that end, I think it's been very valuable for me to have a very winding road to my career. Every little bit and piece has added up to what it is to be a founder, which is wearing so many different hats on a given day. I really, yeah, started out doing sales, SaaS sales. My parents were very entrepreneurial. They had businesses themselves. They had retail locations and were in quick service restaurant
Yeah.
world. So I saw that growing up. We talked about business at the dinner table, and I loved it. But it took me a little while to kind of come around to doing it on my own. Sales was a great platform for me to be able to learn sales. Sales is important for everyone. I truly believe to get their feet wet and be able to sell themselves and sell other products. Um, Ultimately, at a certain point in my career, I really did want to have investing as a tool in my toolkit to really understand the macro environment. I went
Mm,
into business at one point and felt truly like I was so heads down in the specific business I was in that I didn't have a real macro viewpoint on what was going on and the other businesses out there. And so I have been in an investor role a few times, and that's been really helpful for me to get that perspective.
mhm.
Starting Toki felt just really like an amalgamation of all my experiences, having been, right prior to that, in an investor role and having seen the entire landscape of what is commerce technology. Uh, but then also having been the customer too. I'd also had a business before where I was the customer for the product that I was selling. So I had these two perspectives, and I thought both these perspectives have aligned to allow me to see an opportunity in this market. And the timing, good, bad, I don't know, debatable. It's been interesting for everybody the past few years. But that's really what led me to build Toki and to jump back in the position which I love, which is the ambiguity of entrepreneurship.
Fair enough. It is interesting that I see that you started off your sales career at Yotpo, which is somewhat, similar to the similar ICP, I guess, or persona as what you're doing over at Toki, right? And I just spoke to actually
Yes.
he's just like a year in, almost a year in, the VP of retention at Yotpo, which,
Oh,
interesting enough, he comes from the consumer side of things, and he he was leading up like customer success and retention at a lot of consumer goods like Olipop and things
Eli?
like that. Huh?
Eli?
Yeah, Eli.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
he's great.
yeah. Super,
Awesome.
super cool dude. Very insightful, but he's very self-aware and he was just kind of talking about um yeah, just like it's like him, the first person experiencing those problems, those pain points.
Mhm.
He churned as a customer of Yapo twice over, and he knew exactly what the missing links were, and that's ultimately, and then him building up his brand and connecting with the CEO, and that started that conversation, which is I think it's just interesting and seeing like that kind of come full circle for you too in this world, and this space specifically is kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, he
Um,
also has an incredible personal story
yeah.
too. Kind of, yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, Yapo has been such a formidable company, and it's been great to have these pillars within commerce for us all to watch grow, or be a part of. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Interesting. And when you and even like some of the on the investment side of things, it seems like you focused on the same space. So you really kind of it seems like you, at least on all facets, have been trying to get a deeper understanding, whether from, as a customer and started, because I saw the artisan marketplace, so potentially
Mhm.
as a customer there,
Mhm.
and then selling into it, and it's kind of like all these different. You've seen a lot of different facets. What's kind of been some of the things that's been interesting learnings from you? Because I don't feel like everybody that's in this space gets to have that hat or wear that lens to almost have like this 360 view. So, what are some of the differences that you've noticed from somebody who sells a service like this to somebody being the end user of a service to then being an investor into like the space? What have you noticed in terms of like themes and trends over your time in it?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think so much these days about the hindsight that I guess the perspective I have now, having been through the cycle of commerce that has grown so quickly, I think about the major platforms, Shopify, and how there are other platforms and other verticals that have done the same thing, have created a community with platforms and an app marketplace, and how that's allowed a whole bootstrapped ecosystem to grow. And yet this platform was venture backed, and how the dynamics of this ecosystem, what it creates for the founders around it, and what kind of opportunities there are actually outside of commerce, and how this has been replicated in other areas. Like Toast, for example, is like POS system, but of course they have an app marketplace, and there's tons of founders there that are building bootstrap. So I think about that a lot, because at this point I've bootstrapped a company, I've raised venture for a company. I've been in the same vertical, but I've kind of seen the dynamics of the economic dynamics of really how you should play the game appropriately based on what you're building. And I kind of preached that a lot when I was at WeCommerce, but then really having then been on the other side and raised venture too. Um, that's something that I guess the lesson you asked to get more granular on the answer, because you said, what have you learned? It's really that there are opportunities everywhere. It's right sizing the opportunities and the timing of the macro environment. That's, I think, really so important. Of course, there's tons of nuance to the execution of the day to day, which is selling your product. That's all it is. Like at the end of the day, you're just like selling, selling, selling. But there is this high level kind of thing to think about: is, am I in this growing vertical, and is the moment right for me to ride this wave? There's just these waves that we need to be mindful of. So I think it was really cool to be a part of that. It was, for me, happenstance to kind of get into commerce. Again, my parents had retail stores, and was in college setting up their POS systems, and uploading photos when they had new products every single Wednesday to their website, which was not Shopify at the time. But so happens since I got into the space, and it's been really cool to just, yeah, see it bob and weave. And I think that the the crux of it that I actually haven't gotten experience in, that I think is particularly interesting, and I've been close enough to, but agency world is like really fascinating to me, because it is the heartbeat, it is the bloodline of all that is commerce.
Interesting. By each agency world, you mean like brand marketing agencies, or do you mean like others?
Yeah, brand marketing, web dev, advertising, CRO, email. Yeah, anything that's kind of touching the sales or operations of running a brand.
Yeah, interesting. Um, I have a lot of questions, so we can kind of dive into this. Might as well, but like, um, so well, I have two topics. You can choose the path that you want to go down first. So first topic is fast fashion, and then the other topic is Ryan Reynolds. And curious to which one you want to go down first.
Whoa. Both are intriguing. Let's go with fast fashion.
All right. So with fast fashion, right? I think like this is something that's, we've seen come very quickly in the past like 4 or 5 years. What are your thoughts on fast fashion? Like, is it a trend? Is it something that's here to stay? Is it, how do you think other brands are looking to compete against fast fashion in the commerce space? And how much of a percentage of that of the industry is comprised of that now?
Huge amount. For me, it was a very rude wake up call, kind of going through the research that I did when I had Ocelot Market, which was focused on artisan products,
Yeah.
um, realizing that really, at least in the US, and this is definitely very geo-specific, um, we are not buyers where we consider environmental ESG factors in our purchases. We're just not. Um, it's like third, fourth on the list, no matter what generation we're talking about, like Gen Z, millennial, whatever. Um, so that is what it is, I guess. I think it's a huge. I don't know the metrics on how big it is, but I think it's huge and only getting bigger. I will take the other side of it and say, technologically speaking, we're in a exciting time where fast fashion could actually be fast and that you can get the product that you want quickly, but it can still be morally uncompromised.
Yep.
And I guess I'll kind of I have a friend with a company and they don't produce the products that you have on website until you buy them.
Mm,
Kind of like Zara's a bit of that model of like a
yep.
very fast cycle, come out with things, but really don't, the inventory planning is not done until the very last minute. So I guess I'll take the lens of like, I find that particularly exciting. Like I do think that as we go into this generative AI phase of fashion where there aren't real models, they're not real clothes, like potentially if we use those tools to our benefit, this could lead to a very positive place for our environment. Um, but I don't know, that's just me trying to take the silver lining out of it.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I think when you mentioned that too, I think about Kanye West doing the Super Bowl ad and then,
Oh,
the driving to the website, pricing everything at the same thing to realize which is gonna work. And it wasn't like he had in pre made inventory for it. So I thought that was
that
it
was
was smart.
cool.
Yeah, a smart way of doing it, despite what you think of him as a person. But it was so cool to see somebody of that love, that like influence to understand the conversion metrics and how that can play a role into optimizing your process.
I couldn't agree more. I thought the whole thing was brilliantly done. And he actually didn't spend that much on it because it was geo specific. So, oh, excellent. So
Yeah,
well.
pretty cool. Awesome. And so I wanted to talk about, well, the other part of it, the Ryan Reynolds part of it is the Maximum Effort, which is a digital marketing agency, and they work with, huge brands, from like Match.com and obviously the movies that they do, to Peloton to Mint Mobile, and obviously like, his gin company, Aviation Gin. And we're starting to see this trend of more celebrities that are leveraging, like it's almost like their primary way of celebrity, whether it's acting, music, or whatever creative element, is just a way for them to garner enough attention to then really do the thing that's going to make them the most money, right? Which is like find the right kind of brand deal. It's not even a brand deal, but like finding the right opportunity for them. And think about The Rock with his Terramana tequila, and now he's doing, energy drinks and facial creams for men and all this other stuff. And it's like, and even Jake Paul and like somebody who came up as YouTube and starting all these brands. How much do you see like commerce? Like, is that almost like table stakes now to be able to have somebody of influence to be pushing product? And how do you think about that as it relates back to your core business? Are you
Yeah.
seeing that? Yeah.
I think that's actually the right word for it. That might be the word I've been searching for is table stakes. I think it's commerce isn't easy.
Yeah.
Uh, and you really need to avoid anything that could kind of keep you from success. I mean, if there's a way to shortcut success, I think it's worth taking. And I think it is understood amongst the community that having some type of a representative or a spokesperson, whatever you want to call it, be there to help and guide you. I mean, the Bella Hadid is also like a very good example. So I do think it is, and we see it all the time. I mean, there's a, a lot of celebrity brands that we work with, and and a lot of agencies that focus specifically on helping celebrities launch their brands. And so I think yeah, I think it's fun. I think it makes it a little bit harder for everyone else that's doing it without, but it is it's interesting what you're saying about that's kind of the way that uh that's kind of the moneymaker for these celebrities. So not the moneymaker, but like they're kind of I don't know, their ongoing
Uh,
revenue.
Yeah, I
Up.
think it gives them optionality, right? Think about like the
Yeah.
old school people like George Clooney's of the world and the Gwyneth Paltrow of the world, where like, they've created these other brands that now they have the optionality of, do I want to work in this
Yeah.
industry still, right? Or like, do I want to take on this project? And it just gives them that freedom, I think, which is a little bit different than you having to, Nicolas Cage has to keep making movies. Like, he
Yeah.
also has a very luxurious lifestyle, but like he has to keep producing these things as the way for his primary income, right? And I think that's kind of there's a few ways to look at it, and I think we're starting to see this shift. That being said, I would love to get your take as to being a retention platform.
Mhm.
I, I think about attention, like,
Yeah.
and attention is it's from a go-to-market side, it's so scarce, and from a retention standpoint, it's like um it's so fleeting. And how do you think about that? What are some of the data that you guys are seeing um that might be indicating of how brands retain attention and keep that attention going? Especially like there are a lot of celebrity brands out there, but I also know through friends that do work in that space specifically for talent agencies that are helping develop their clients and stuff, that for every one that we see, there's 100 ideas that they've tried with other celebrities that never worked and never made it to market, right? And so
Yeah.
similar I think, like that you see across the board. But yeah, how do you think about attention as it relates to retention, and how do you recapture that or keep it engaged?
Yeah. Well, I think what's kind of interesting too, just outside of what we do, is uh, kind of like creator loyalty is at an all-time low because of TikTok anyway. So with Instagram and with like prior social platforms, like you would follow a person. Sorry, my dog is
It's all good. I love it.
a little rambunctious right now.
No
Uh,
worries.
Yeah, we would follow a person. Like I kind of remember back in 2013, 2014, the specific bloggers that I followed their blog and I followed them on Instagram and I was really a part of their lives up until them having kids. Whereas TikTok by default doesn't really work that way. The data is showing that it doesn't work that way. People are watching it like television. It's more entertainment. You see a piece of content that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I'm going to follow this person at all. So there's more engagement on a per content basis, but less followership.
Mm.
So I think that's really interesting. It really varies on a brand by brand basis. We do this analysis with every brand that we work with or at least if they're coming inbound through the sales cycle, we have this calculator, we look at all their data, all past 3 years of purchase data, and look at really like first to second purchase, like the whole kind of customer cohort, what percentage are buying two times, three times, who hasn't bought in a while, and it kind of feels like they're falling off, like they don't care about you anymore. And it's all so different. And there's just brands out there that'll really surprise you with, they might have a really unattractive website, but the product is fantastic. And so people still keep coming back. And I think that's a thing for me that is a big learning, is kind of thought, you make it work no matter what. And you do have baseline, you have to have a great product. Like that is what it is. But I don't think, we haven't seen in the data anything regards to certain generations necessarily being like less loyal than others or harder retention. It's really truly dependent on the brand, but we're certainly in a time where technology is foreboding that people are, not as loyal, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel like I don't know. I mean, it's this is completely anecdotal, but I feel like you're seeing younger and younger generations just kind of like constantly not maybe changing their mind, but evolving their mind so quickly with
Mm-hmm.
because maybe they're getting information so fast. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're forming opinions about something so fast. And then they get all this other information, all of a sudden it changes to another opinion. So, and I think that those opinions and then how that impacts self-awareness and self-identity and all those things and why we buy certain things, right? Because it helps it starts certain points like defining portions of our belief systems and things like that. Um, so I am curious kind of like what we're going to see here in the next few years. And that kind of
You did.
alludes to my next question, which is what are you thinking is, the things that's kind of, keeping you up or just thinking about like how the market might be shifting over these next couple of years. You also just mentioned about, with AI not having real models and not having real product, but be able to create what the look and feel of certain things might be, and provide the visual components of that through AI, and perhaps turning that fast fashion to a positive, um, across more brands. But yeah, curious as to what you're thinking in addition to that.
Yeah, I do think it's like a longer time horizon than we think it's going to be. I think the true integration of like AI and VR and these things, that we're still on like a 10-15 year road. Like it's, and I try to be, I was very critical of a lot of the AI tools when they first came out, of like, well, this isn't going to do anything. It's like we're just so early innings that it's really not worth jumping too much into now. But I think there's like it's worth looking at from like a 5 year, 10 year lens of what this industry is going to be like. I think if we look out like on a 10 year perspective, the way we even interact with the UI of a website is going to be so drastically different. The way we shop and actually like go through a digital shopping experience isn't going to be that we're clicking through. There's not going to be a menu with a sub menu. That's not. And I think we're going to be way beyond that. It's going to be entirely different. I think for the time being, you know, creators are going to be set up with a easier toolkit to be able to set up these shops. Like the next Mr. Beast is going to be able to set up his generative website within seconds, and he's not going to have to even sample his product, and like he's never going to have to ship it. It's like really hands-off experience, which we haven't been there. Like in many capacities, sure, drop shipping exists, but for those out there that are listening that have run a Shopify store before, they know it's like really, there's so much annoying nuance to like setting up these products, and it's really quite miserable. So next like 5 years, we'll be able to use like automation agents, and like there just won't be this like really aggravated effort on a day-to-day basis. But the hurdles will still exist, I think, which is Our main way to really get customers now is through affiliates or influencers or through paid advertising.
Yeah.
And so that's still like the main bottleneck in growth for anyone, particularly in this space. And I don't know when that lets up, how that lets up. I mean, working with influencers is very expensive.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what that next phase of customer acquisition looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're talking through that, I almost like can imagine this dystopian world where it's just like you don't have any of these super brands anymore. You just have all these micro brands, and like it's
Yeah,
there might be at the end of the day, everything's white labeled, and there's probably like a handful of people that are manufacturing it all, but they're all just labeled differently, similar like a grocery store to a certain extent. But it's depending upon how it's branded, who's behind it, and the important thing will be gaining the influence somehow, and that'll be how people buy. I don't know.
totally. Well, I think a lot that really jarred people when we saw Nike's earnings last quarter. People are like, "Oh my gosh, like who thought this like behemoth could ever have a decrease in their sneaker sales?" But sure enough, it's because, like it's Noble and all the other athleisure companies out there are just nibbling. They're all nibbling. All the micro brands are kind of nibbling. And so, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, we'll see. Last question here as we're rounding up on time is just kind of more so, personally, as a, as you've done a lot of different things as we kind of windy path to a certain degree, but all kind of, I think, stems together at the root. Um, is is there like where do you foresee yourself like your passions being in the next 5, 10 years? Like I also know that it seems like you have more altruistic values of wanting to give back to the community at large. And how does that play into commerce for you, or does it play into commerce, or does it have to in your world of things? But what it really kind of keeps you excited, and what is it all for? Like what are you doing all this for, and kind of the end game?
Oh, that's such a good question. I really like actually the intersection of where like the public and private sectors intertwine. So ultimately, like that's my end goal is to be able to participate in both. But I think just like most people out there that have gotten involved in politics, they do it later in their career once they've kind of gotten some stability. And so I think ultimately, like I would like to incorporate both because I think that's so important. And a lot of the things that frustrate me about, you know, environmental efforts and whatnot, I mean, it requires, I believe, both public and private. So yeah, I think that's ultimately like my end game. But in the meantime, playing the game of business, I think is really fun. And I think it requires a really strong moral compass and a lot of ethical decision making on a day-to-day basis, small and large. And so I really enjoy that. And I hope I can do that yeah, in a number of industries and yeah, I love the team at Toki and what we've been able to do, and it's really fun operationally on a day-to-day basis to be able to make interesting product decisions and execute on our customers' dreams and really push the envelope of what they're looking to accomplish. So I think when people ask like what else would you be doing like if you could do something else, I'm like I enjoy this, I enjoy business and yeah, so that's just
Yeah.
want to keep doing that.
Very cool. And I mean, as you mentioned earlier, I think the skill set that you get from entrepreneurship and doing business, especially, having a sales and marketing background too, is like it's instrumental everywhere. You see it play out in this election race and everything else that's around socio-political change. Like you're still selling an idea and you're still selling yourself and trying to figure out how to connect to the right audience with the right language so that you can then ultimately institute the change or sell the product or whatever it might be. So
Totally, politics is marketing on
yeah.
steroids.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
totally is. Yeah.
watching it in real time.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
exactly. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your journey. It was super interesting conversation. And wish you the best of luck on Toki and what's to come. Of
Thank you so much. Thank you, I really appreciate you.
course, thank you.